And it's usually on the phone, right? Somebody will call on the phone. And I actually had an older friend of mine, she got a call from quote unquote Microsoft. And after they installed the malware on her computer, they asked her to give them $595. And she was like, "Well, I don't do any online banking and I don't put my credit card online." But she did snail mail them a check for $595. So they got their money anyways.
Technology is transforming how we think, how we lead, and how we win. From Intervision, this is Status Go, the show helping IT leaders move beyond the status quo, master their craft, and propel their IT vision.
Welcome to another insightful episode of the Status Go podcast, where we dive into the ever-evolving world of technology and its impact on various industries. I'm your host, Jeff Tunn, and today we have a fascinating discussion lined up for all you IT pros out there. Transitioning from one industry to another can be daunting, especially when you're accustomed to the fast-paced environment of something like the Virgin Hyperloop. But what happens when you shift gears and you find yourself at the forefront of technology in senior living? Joining us today is Dawn Armstrong. She's the Vice President of Information Technology Operations at Human Good. With her wealth of experience in IT in various industries and her current role overseeing technology in the senior living sector, Dawn brings a unique perspective to the table of this concept of switching industries. We'll explore Dawn's journey from tackling the challenges of managing IT in a marketing-driven landscape to spearheading innovative solutions that enhance the quality of life for seniors. From robots in the dining room, believe it or not, to the intricacies of smart homes, Dawn has seen it all and will share her insights on navigating this dynamic industry. So, if you're ready to glean wisdom from someone who successfully bridged the gap between industries, grab your headphones and get ready for a captivating conversation that promises to inspire and inform. Without further ado, let's dive into the world of senior living technology with Dawn Armstrong on Status Go. Dawn, welcome back to Status Go.
Oh, hi, Jeff, and thanks so much for having me back. I'm super excited to be back on the Status Go podcast.
Well, it has been a while. I think the episode that you first appeared on was the 74th episode of Status Go called Reducing IT Complexity. And now I think this episode will be like episode 245 or something like that. So it's been a while. And I think you were on probably in 2019 or maybe 2020. But catch us up. What's been going on in your world since then?
You mentioned the reducing IT complexity, and I didn't really think about it until now, but it's like, wow, have we ever increased that complexity? Oh, my goodness.
Uh,
Um, but I really feel like I've lived a lifetime since then. Let's see. Well, we survived COVID, right? We all survived
yeah,
COVID.
yeah, yeah.
And at the beginning of 2022, I left Virgin Hyperloop and actually moved over to a senior living organization called Human Good,
Yeah.
where, so at Human Good, I take care of the infrastructure side, cybersecurity, as well as all of the community service and support.
Yeah, and to me that's kind of a huge jump, right? From something that was let's call it maybe bleeding edge at Hyperloop to Human Good, and senior living is one of those industries that a lot of folks will think, well, where's the technology involved in that? And I know you've got some stories about where the technology is involved with that, but think back to 22 when you're making this change. How did you how did you get yourself ready for that transition from Hyperloop to Human Good?
Well, that's a great question, and I find that it's really valuable when transitioning to a new company to really take the time to reflect, on the role that you're leaving from, and you have to consider the achievements and challenges and ponder over what you've approached differently, and contemplate how, as a leader, you can enhance your methods and what you've done before. And in starting a new role, I learned that embracing patience is absolutely essential. My inclination really is to just immerse myself into everything and start to make changes. And my experience has really taught me that you really have to understand the psychology of the team that you're coming in to lead
Ah,
before you do that. Because if you think about it, right, you're entering an environment where everyone is probably feeling anxious. They're getting a new leader,
yeah,
who, you don't know if that leader was really well respected and everybody loved that person, or whether there's some issues that were going on and maybe that's why they left. But regardless of whether it's positive or negative, it really it is important to understand what transpired before and what this
yeah,
team really needs to be successful. But I think it is really vital to grasp the effects of the past leadership, and the effects are important, right? Like what
yeah,
happened with this team, and really to begin the process of rebuilding the team.
yeah. I like that. In some ways, it's honoring the past, right? You don't want to come in and change things just for the sake of changing. The things that you want to bring to the table have to be meaningful in that context. So, what are some of the strategies that you use as you're coming in? Call it your first 90 days, 120 days. How are you getting to know your team while at the same time getting to know the business leaders and keeping the train on the tracks?
Yeah. Yeah, that train needs to be on the tracks, definitely. I meet with every single individual in the entire department, whether they report to me or not, whether they're direct reports or not. It's and I try to really put them at ease and let them know that what they tell me is in strict confidence, so
Yeah,
that I can
yeah,
really understand how they're feeling. I want to know if they're a flight risk,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I want to understand what the overall mental health of the team is, um, and also their technical chops,
yeah.
right? Are they up to the task of where we're going? Because we are going somewhere. Technology doesn't stand still, right?
That's right. That's right.
But I really believe that best practices in information technology are universal, and they're not really related to the exact industry you're in.
Hmm.
Because, for example, good IT hygiene will serve and protect the business regardless of what the
Yes.
business size is and what type of business it is.
Yeah. So part of what you do is kind of start with the basic foundational pieces, right? And make sure. So are you doing when you're stepping into a role like that? Are you're assessing the people, you're having those conversations, but you're also taking a look around at the technology and kind of doing your own mental assessment of what you've gotten yourself into, so to speak, and where the status of it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it human good. We have 125 locations across the country, and I really tried to visit as many as I could. And I want to go walk around
Yeah.
and dig into the MDF and the IDF and meet with the community leaders there and find out what their
Mhm.
challenges are. But and I guess maybe I'm old school. I grew up from the you know being on the ground, programming and
Mhm.
doing system admin work and doing network work. And I basically want rights. I want permission into every single system, and I'm going to go poke around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That
it's
that
amazing what you find when you start poking around.
Well, when you're poking around at that level, yeah, yeah. I tell you, the last CIO role I had, they wouldn't let me have those permissions. They were afraid I'd muck it up. So,
Yes, I've been
um,
given view rights on a few things. It's like, no, you can only view or read it.
yeah, it's like, what's this button do? No, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, as you're doing that, talk a little bit. You mentioned that you tried to visit as many of the sites as you could and meet with the community leaders. What types of things are you trying to learn from them?
Well, I think I want to understand what their challenges are
Yeah,
and
yeah,
what are the needs of the residents and what's missing on the team member side, because at most of these communities, we run 24/7. We usually have, anywhere from 2 to 350 team members there. Is there a piece that would make your life easier? And what
yeah,
is that?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Because frankly, we're here to serve. It's all about the business. We're here to make your life easier. The job of IT is not the roadblock. And frankly, the job of cybersecurity is also not the roadblock. Is to enable the business to do their business, but in a safe, secure, and technologically responsible manner.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, one of the things that you mentioned when we talked a couple weeks ago, Dawn, was that a good portion of your role is marketing. Explain that a little bit. What do you mean by that when you talk about the role of the IT leader being marketing?
I find that if leadership doesn't understand what the IT department is doing and what they do basically on a daily basis, you're not going to get the funding that you need. You're
Hmm.
not going to get the FTEs, the staff that you need to do the job. And I found that every single meeting that I go to, there is some component of marketing.
Yeah,
Um, here at Human Good, we have, of course, the whole C-suite. We have a large board as well. And we have a whole layer of senior vice presidents and vice presidents because we have 6,000 employees, so of course
yeah. It's a
there's
big
all that
organization.
leadership. Yeah, it's a big organization. And if the C-suite and that vice president level that's driving strategy down basically to every single area of the business doesn't understand that there's an IT component in every single thing they do, then
Yeah,
things are going to get missed, right? So, and it's not really just shadow IT. It's really the entire comprehensive piece of IT. I'm not explaining this very well, but um,
they need to understand where technology fits in their business, and to do that, you're trying to translate IT speak into their language, right? So that they can make so they can connect those dots, right?
yeah, but it even really goes more fundamental than that, Jeff.
Uh huh.
It's really just being invited to the conversation.
Yeah.
I find that in pretty much every organization I've worked for, and it was really especially true here at Human Good, is that they've already designed the architectural plans to completely remodel this entire new, this whole facility, and they didn't bring IT in at all. Or
Yeah.
they're launching a whole new finance, automation system, and they've gone through the contract negotiations with a SaaS provider, and they didn't ask IT anything about it. But
Yeah.
yet, we get pulled in and they're like, "Hey, can you turn on single sign-on for this?" Sure. What are we
Yeah.
doing?
What is this?
So you really have to dig in and kind of weasel your way into every little meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is time consuming in the beginning, but once you start to really build those relationships, and of course it's all about relationships, right? We hear that everywhere, but it really is about the relationships. Once you start to get people's minds wrapped around the fact that, oh yeah, IT is in everything that I do, even
Yeah.
plugging in my phone or my computer has to do with
Yeah.
IT, right? It
Yep.
goes down to that level.
That and it's so pervasive in everything that we do that I think there's a lot of times people in general take it for granted, right? It just works, and what they don't see are the hours that you and your team are putting in behind the scenes to make sure it works. So let's talk tech a little bit. What are some of the uh, technologies that you all support, and what were some of the challenges when you walked in 22 that you had to really get your arms around?
Well, you just mentioned that people just assume everything is just there, and you reminded me of one of my favorite sayings is that Wi-Fi is your God-given right. That's what everybody thinks. Wi-Fi is your God-given right, no matter where you are. And wireless challenges have had a huge component in Hyperloop as well
Yeah.
as here at Human Good. Like with Virgin Hyperloop, for example, I was challenged to get Wi-Fi working in a metal tube in vacuum for a vehicle that's going 600 kilometers an hour. Like, come on.
Yeah, like how do you do that?
I work in IT. I'm not a magician, but
Right, right.
we did get it to work. We did get that to work.
That's
And
awesome.
then I come to senior living, and it's totally relatable to what we were doing at Hyperloop because the reason for that Wi-Fi was life safety. Obviously, in the future of Hyperloop, having people be able to connect and play their
Hmm.
movies or whatever is important from an entertainment perspective, but really it's a life safety issue. We wanted to make sure that we could speak with the people in
Yeah,
our test pod at the time.
yeah,
And and exactly the same is true here at Human Good. It's a life safety issue. If you don't have cellular service or Wi-Fi, you can't make a call to 911.
right.
And 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, no, that wasn't really a thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Because everybody had
now,
landlines.
yeah, and now
Yeah,
it's a necessity.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and some of our campuses are huge. Some of our life plan communities are 50, 60 acres. They have walking trails and they're just quite large. And the way cellular providers work is they will typically put their microcells along a major street.
right.
They don't Those microcells are super focused to basically handle the sidewalk and the road and maybe inside the businesses
Right
right on
there.
that
Yeah,
line. They're
yeah,
not focused on spreading out. So we
yeah.
have campuses, I have 50 acres that have no cell service.
Wow.
And in today's age, you're like, "What?" But
Yeah, no
yes.
kidding. Yeah, yeah. That's so what do you do running IT operations to get service there? What types of things are you looking at?
Well, there's all kinds of challenges. In some instances, we're able to put outdoor access points and things like that in. In other instances, we have got cellular boosters, which will
Yeah,
take a signal in from a donor antenna on the street, and then we get little other smaller antennas placed throughout the entire community. But that's doesn't really work for a really large community that has a lot of open space.
yeah,
So
yeah.
right now we're actually working with several carriers, one in particular that I won't mention, but in order to actually put a cell tower on the
Ah,
property.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it's all a matter of finances and who's going to pay for that.
yeah, yeah.
This carrier that we're working with is really been doing some great work with Human Good, and I'm
Hmm.
pretty hopeful that we'll be able to support this community from a cellular perspective.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But every site is a unicorn. I mean, it's a snowflake.
Yeah. And you have 125, is that what you said?
Yeah, we have about 21 or two. I lose count, but we have about 21 or 22 life plan communities, and those are the
Mhm. Okay.
larger properties. And then we have about 105 or so affordable housing communities, and those are funded by HUD, and those
Yeah.
are the nonprofit arm
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you joked earlier about Wi-Fi being a God-given right, but what's happening as my generation ages, right? I'm 66, so I might be interested in one of your communities one of these days, sooner than I'd care to admit. But in all seriousness, we've become this always connected, always on society, and as those the boomers age and go into those facilities, they are demanding Wi-Fi access for their streaming on their television, and they want their cell phone to work no matter where they are on the property. And that's putting more and more of a load on you and your team as that happens, right?
Oh, 100%. And you look really good for your age, Jeff.
Thanks.
But yeah, that's really very, quite true.
So it goes beyond the life safety into kind of the lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. And from a connectivity or online connectivity perspective, right? If you think about residents that were in senior care facilities, no matter what type, back during COVID, that connectivity was the only way, really, unless you're standing outside the window,
Yeah,
that they were able to keep connection with their families, their loved ones, their friends, um, and so that connectivity, like all of the seniors have learned how to use their iPads, their iPhones,
yeah,
and all of these online devices. And so, yes, there is definitely a demand for um, faster bandwidth. Actually, is really what's crushing us right now. When I
yeah,
first got
yeah,
here, it was really Wi-Fi coverage was an issue,
yeah. And
and
now
so
it's
we worked
I
through.
need faster because my
Yeah,
Netflix is clocking. All right, I
yeah,
need my
buffering.
Netflix.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's never ending. Like we resolve the coverage issue everywhere,
uh-huh.
so everybody has good coverage, but now it's not fast enough.
Yeah.
So
So we were talking about this digital divide and some of the things that you and your team do, because you support, in addition to the team members as you call them for human good, you also are supporting the residents. So what types of things are you doing for the residents to help them understand the technology and how to use it properly?
yeah, great question, Jeff. So at each of our life plan communities, they're quite large, and so we have an IT admin at each of the life plan communities. They take tickets from residents and from team members. So a resident can say, "Hey, my cable TV isn't working, my streaming service, my computer doesn't print anymore," and the tech will go out there and assist them. But I think one of the things that I really like is that we hold monthly technical education sessions for the
Hmm.
residents, and those are well received. We also hold open office hours as well,
Yeah.
um, where you can bring whatever device you have, and we'll help you with whatever questions you have. Um, in the affordable housing communities, though, we don't, they're smaller. They tend to be a little bit smaller in size. They have much less staff, but our we have a philanthropy department here at Human Good, and they're always very hard at work securing technical grants for increasing the wireless footprint at the affordable housing communities, and getting a library of iPads to
Hmm.
lend out to residents. And we usually, as an IT department, we like to set up when we have those library of iPads. They might have 4 or 5 at a affordable housing community to lend out. We like to set them up so that they're super easy to use. We take
Hmm.
off we take off some of the applications that may not be intuitive to them, and make sure they have access to a web browser and different things like that. And then, of course, cybersecurity is incredibly important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you want to protect the assets of human good from a cybersecurity perspective, but you're also wanting the residents to have good cyber hygiene and protect their own assets, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So for our team members, we have a really comprehensive cybersecurity awareness program that culminates in October, my favorite holiday of the year, which is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And you and I, Jeff, have talked a lot about IT marketing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
marketing is absolutely vital as part of cybersecurity awareness. You've really got to get the word out over and over and over again. And the more you talk about it, whether that's at the C level or at the team member level or at the resident level, the more you talk about it, the more it's on people's minds,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the more in tune they are with it, right? For our team members, we even release tips during the winter holidays around how to shop safely online
Oh,
and in person,
yeah,
and we coach them on situational awareness, so that they don't get broken into. And for our residents, in those tech ed sessions that we do for them, one of those a month is usually has a cybersecurity focus.
yeah,
um, and it's really unfortunate, but we all have stories about how somebody in our family has been scammed. And it's usually on the phone, right?
yeah,
Somebody will call
yeah.
on the phone, and they use FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, to get
Yep.
people all riled up and to send money. I actually had an older friend of mine, a few months ago, who, she got a call from quote unquote Microsoft, and they noticed she had a problem on her computer. And, so she went to the web page that they wanted her to go to. And of
Yeah,
course, then they own her,
yeah,
unfortunately. And
yeah,
after they installed the malware on her computer, they asked her to give them $595.
yep.
And she was like, well, I don't do any online banking, and I don't put my credit card online. Thank goodness.
Yeah, no
But she
kidding.
did snail mail them a check for $595.
Oh,
So they got
that,
their money anyways. But
yeah,
and
that's
I
too
ended
bad.
up and with older people, and nobody wants to be thought of that they're not on top of things, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so she didn't tell me for quite a few months
yeah.
because she was embarrassed.
Hmm.
And finally, when she did tell me, I had to wipe her computer and everything. But um, that's really a problem. And I don't know if I told you this story, Jeff, but the day I started, I was at a community. Because we're all remote, I have to go to a community to pick up my laptop.
Yep.
And I happened to run into the one of the caregivers, and she said, "Oh my goodness, Mrs. So and so just wired $50,000 to
Oh
somebody,
my.
because they did the kidnap scam on her. And unfortunately, it was successful, and that money's
Yeah,
gone.
yeah, yeah.
It happens all the time.
Wow. That's just. I'll say this, and I may have Eric cut this out. There's a special place in hell for people that do that. You know.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about. I kind of hinted at this in the introduction. Robots in the dining room. What's that?
Yeah, we at some of our communities, this is a funny story, actually. Well, maybe it's only funny to IT people, but
Well, that's
at
who's
some of
listening, so that's okay.
yeah, at some of our communities, we do have robots in the dining room that were put in. I think they were put in as a trial. It was a little bit before my time, but and they run around and bust the tables.
Okay.
And the residents kind of get a kick out of it, because this robot comes up and you put your plates on there and away it goes, toodles
Uh-huh.
off. Um, but as I mentioned earlier, it was done without telling IT about it.
Oh gosh.
So guess what? We didn't really have very good Wi-Fi in the dining rooms. So the
Yeah.
robot would get over to a certain table and it'd be like dead stop. So,
Yeah,
IT is important everywhere, even with dining room robots.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, it's another great example of why you need to involve IT in things. But so senior living, the technology parts of it, the aspects of it are exploding, are growing. How do you keep up uh, on emerging technologies, and how do you coach your team to keep up on those technologies?
Oh, that's quite the question. We're moving so fast now. Like I truly believe we're moving so much faster even this year than we did last year. I feel like January just kicked off with this huge bang, and
Yeah.
um, it's just has been absolutely nonstop. And I'm finding it's more and more challenging to get my team to kind of self educate, I guess I would say, because they
Yeah.
just don't have the time, right? Um, so what I've been doing lately is really making sure in my budget I have budget to send them to a conference.
Yeah.
Everybody gets to go to a conference in their particular specialty each year, and and if it's one of my people's first time at a conference, I also coach them on going to a conference because
Yeah.
some of these conferences are huge,
Oh yeah.
and in order to get the most out of it, it's really better to coach them so they can understand, where should I go to get the most information.
Yeah.
um, it does no good to wear yourself out at a conference and attend 12 hours of sessions, because then you're burnt out and you don't remember anything.
Right.
um, so I coach them through things. We also do lunch and learns. I've done that for many years. That's really important. And I cross collaboration between, like, I have 21 um, site system admins, and
Hmm.
then I have an infrastructure team. Well, that infrastructure team typically doesn't go out to the communities to do work. They rely on those site admins to do the work for them.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you install this switch and do this and plug this in? And but if you don't have that first of all, that great relationship back and forth between those two teams,
Hmm.
it's just going to be more difficult than it really needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, you really need that cross training, because every IT person, I would say 90% of IT people are in this business because they love it. They love the new shiny next thing.
Yeah.
And we all do. We all want the next iPhone that comes out in September. So it's important to kind of curate that, right? I want to make sure that wherever your interest is, that we're going to help you get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes that means that maybe where you're going is not here.
Yeah. They may outgrow or may have
Yeah.
other aspirations, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's okay. I think you have to have the confidence in that culture that you've created, that that person, if they move on, then you've done a good thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You've helped
Yeah.
their career. They've done good work here with you. um, and maybe you'll run into them again because it is a small business.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a great approach. And Dawn, we've reached that point in the Status Go podcast where I love to ask my question, because we want to leave our listeners with this clear call to action. So, what are one or two things our listeners should do tomorrow because they listened to us today? Whether they're changing industries or whether they happen to be in senior living, what are a couple of things they should go do?
So I wanted to share an insight with your audience, Jeff, that during and after COVID, I felt like I was caught in this continuous loop of virtual meetings,
Yeah.
just constantly. And I would get a bunch of action items, or I would have to follow up on action items, and I felt like I was drowning, frankly. And in December, I I decided to clear my schedule for 3 days to allow myself to catch up. What I didn't anticipate was the creative freedom that all of a sudden happened in my brain. Like
Ah.
the first day was definitely spent catching up, right? But
Hmm.
then my mind started to do what I would call free think.
Hmm.
Um, and that, frankly, the wealth of new ideas that emerged was truly invaluable. I've been inspired by this.
Hmm.
I feel that as a leader, it's really not my place to be in meetings 9 hours a day. It really
Right.
isn't.
Right.
So I've been inspired by this, and I've actually encouraged my team leaders to schedule that same type of break.
Hmm.
Um, and we've made it a biannual goal for 2024, where they'll take 2 3 day breaks throughout the year, and I'm really excited to see what's going to come out of that, because
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
some pretty awesome ideas, if I may say
Yeah.
so myself.
Yeah.
So I guess in a nutshell, I would say that it's essential as leaders that we step away from our day to day and give ourselves time to just think freely.
Yeah, time to reflect and catch up, but also reflect and think about things. I love that as an action, and I think that's something all of our listeners could do is just block off a couple of days every so often, whether it's twice a year like you're doing there, or gosh, if you could do it more frequently, that would be awesome. But you're not working. You're thinking about work. You're just
Hmm.
not in meetings all day long. Yeah, I love
Exactly.
that.
And I think it's been drilled into our head that if our calendar isn't full, we're not working. But
We're
that's
not
really not
working, and that's not the
true.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I tried doing the 4 hour block and the 2 hour block. That doesn't work.
No, you need that longer period of time
Yeah.
because it takes you a long time to get into that mindset because you're used to run, and so it takes that day or so to get into that. Yeah. Well, Dawn, this has been fantastic. I've loved our conversation. I promise it won't be 5 more years before you're on Status Go again. We'll have you back on the show, and really appreciate you carving out time for us today.
Well, you bet, Jeff. It's been fun.
Well, and to our listeners, if you have a question or want to learn more, visit intervision.com. The show notes will provide links and contact information for Dawn if you want to reach out to her directly. This is Jeff Tunn for Dawn Armstrong. Thank you very much for listening.
You've been listening to the Status Go podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes or get more information at intervision.com. If you'd like to contribute to the conversation, find Intervision on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Thank you for listening. Until next time.